They say history never repeats, yet it is staring at you through the screen right now. In 1929, newspapers screamed about a permanent boom. Radios promised a modern miracle economy, and everyday people borrowed against tomorrow because tomorrow looked guaranteed. Today, the headlines glow with record highs, miracle technologies, and a new era where risk supposedly died. Back then, they called it electrification. Now, they call it artificial intelligence. Different words, identical seduction. Your parents were taught that the crash came out of nowhere, that it was a tragic surprise no one could see. That is the lie that keeps the system breathing. The truth is that euphoria is always loudest just before collapse, because silence would reveal the cracks. In 1929, shoeshiners traded stocks and housewives speculated on margin. Today, teenagers day trade on phones while billionaires tell you the future is bright. People believed they were witnessing evolution, not inflation. They thought wealth had become effortless. They were wrong then, and the same machinery is working on you now. Debt is expanding faster than income, valuations float free from reality, and central planners assure you the safeguards are stronger than ever. That promise is not protection. It is anesthesia. Look closer at the patterns hiding behind the optimism. Before 1929, credit exploded, regulation loosened, and insiders quietly exited while the crowd was still cheering. The same fingerprints are everywhere today. Buybacks replace investment, bailouts replace consequences, and the media repeats the story it is paid to tell. You are not watching prosperity. You are watching choreography. The most dangerous belief is that collapse arrives with sirens. It does not. It arrives disguised as confidence. In 1929, families went to bed wealthy and woke up erased, not because the world ended, but because trust did. Markets did not crash. Permission was revoked. Every generation is told it is smarter than the last, armed with better tools and stronger institutions. Yet the emotional cycle never changes. Greed becomes faith. Faith becomes blindness. Blindness becomes obedience. And obedience becomes the moment your savings are no longer yours. If this feels uncomfortable, that is not fear, it is recognition. You have been here before, just not personally. The mirror is already close enough to see yourself inside it, smiling at a system that cannot survive its promises. The last time this happened, people lost everything in 48 hours. So ask the question no one on television will ask. What if the crash already started? They did not build stability, they manufactured belief. In the late 1920s, Herbert Hoover stood before microphones and declared prosperity was just around the corner, even as banks quietly failed behind the curtains. Today, the faces have changed, but the script is identical. Central bankers speak in rehearsed.com. Politicians repeat growth statistics, and the media turns every tremor into a triumph of resilience. You are not being informed, you are being managed. People think collapses are accidents, they are operations. Before every historic crash, there is a season of denial, a chorus of distraction, and then a coordinated disappearance by those who wrote the story. In 1929, the government urged Americans to keep buying, to keep borrowing, to stay patriotic to the system that was already cracking. Now, the Federal Reserve insists inflation is temporary, that markets are healthy, that debt can grow forever without consequence. The language is modern, the betrayal is ancient. Look at who benefits from this theater. Bailouts are sold as rescue missions, yet they never rescue you. They rescue balance sheets, hedge funds, institutions too large to fail and too insulated to feel pain. Your losses are called collateral damage, an unfortunate necessity to preserve confidence. Their losses are called systemic risks, emergencies that justify unlimited printing. That is not economic policy, it is class warfare in a suit. The illusion is maintained through spectacle. During Hoover's era, newspapers were flooded with stories about innovation, radio, mass production, and a glowing future that made dissent feel unpatriotic. Today, it is artificial intelligence, green revolutions, digital finance, and a permanent bull market engineered by brilliance. The message is simple. Trust us. We have it under control. You only lose if you panic. But panic is not the enemy. Awareness is. That is why every warning is mocked, every skeptic is labeled extreme, every questioner is framed as dangerous. Because the moment people stop believing, the machinery stops working. The dollar, the bond market, the pension system, the stock exchange, none of it is real wealth. It is collective faith, audited by elites who know exactly when to exit. Here is the part you were never meant to notice. The architects of illusion never go down with the ship. In 1929, insiders sold near the top, transferred assets, and waited while ordinary families stood in bread lines. After 2008, the same class emerged richer, rewarded for detonating the system. Today, their money is repositioned, hedged, global, untouchable. Meanwhile, you are told to relax, to keep contributing to retirement accounts, to believe the next election will fix what the last one broke. They call it stability, but it is sedation. And when the collapse finally becomes undeniable, those who promised safety will be nowhere to be found. It is choreography. Deny the danger, distract the crowd, disappear. They did not save 1929, they survived it. And the people telling you everything is our position for you. They tell you every crisis is unique, a random storm in an otherwise stable sky. That belief is the greatest trick ever sold. In reality, collapse follows a strict rhythm, a financial heartbeat that has governed empires for centuries. First comes debt, cheap and plentiful, sold as opportunity. Then assets inflate beyond their usefulness, turning homes into chips and savings into wagers. Leverage becomes a habit, then an addiction, until the system can only function by borrowing from the future. 1929 was not the beginning of this cycle, it was the exposure. For decades before, credit expanded faster than production, speculation replaced labor, and faith replaced math. When confidence cracked, the fracture raced through every bank, every household, every promise. Then in 1971, the cycle was rebooted when money was unchained from reality itself. Gold was severed, discipline removed, and debt became the new oxygen. People felt richer without creating anything, and that feeling became policy. 2008 was not a failure of regulation, it was the next beat of the same heart. Leverage, hidden inside derivatives, housing treated like a slot machine, and an entire generation trained to believe risk had been engineered away. When the confidence event arrived, governments printed their way out, teaching the world a fatal lesson. Losses could be postponed, consequences could be deferred, and reality could be negotiated. Then came the pandemic era, the most aggressive distortion in history. Trillions were injected at once, not to build, but to anesthetize. Markets rocketed while streets were empty. Fortunes multiplied while small businesses died, and a synchronized global bubble formed across stocks, bonds, real estate, and even art. For the first time, every major economy was running the same experiment, drowning the same problems in the same cheap money. This is the hidden cycle they never diagram for you. Debt explosion leads to asset mania. Asset mania demands leverage. Leverage creates fragility. Fragility waits for a confidence event. And when confidence breaks, the fracture is not local, it is systemic. The past always had a pressure valve. After 1929, currencies were reset. After 1971, inflation rebalanced the books. After 2008, money printing papered the damage. But now the valves are welded shut. Debt is global, not national. Markets are algorithmic, not human. Supply chains are intertwined, not independent. There is no isolated economy left to absorb the shock. When trust leaves one corner, it leaves all of them. That is what synchronization means. A single fracture echoes everywhere. Every empire dies this way. Not in flames, but in spreadsheets. Not from invasion, but from internal promises that outgrow their foundations. The cycle is not broken, it is complete, and the completion phase is always the fastest. They want you to believe there will be another reset, another innovation, another heroic intervention that restores the old world. But the pattern is now too large, too synchronized, too leveraged to unwind gently. When belief collapses, banks close first in software, not steel. Freezing digits you assumed were real, teaching millions overnight that ownership was always conditional, always reversible, always granted by institutions that never planned to share your fate with. This time, there is no reset button. The collapse will not announce itself on the evening news. It will arrive as a normal morning that feels slightly wrong. You will open your banking app and see a loading wheel where your balance used to be. You will refresh, assume it is maintenance, then notice the silence from customer support. Somewhere, a server has paused your life, and nobody feels responsible. They taught you to measure safety in numbers on a screen. Pensions, savings accounts, retirement projections, all presented as permanent fixtures of adulthood. But permanence was an illusion rented from confidence. When the system tightens, the first casualties are promises. Pensions are not vaults, they are obligations, and obligations evaporate when liquidity dries up. You will be told adjustments are temporary while benefits are recalculated downward in language designed to sound technical instead of terminal. Banks will insist your funds are secure, even as withdrawals are delayed, limited, or rationed. It will not feel like theft, it will feel like policy. Forms will appear, waiting periods will multiply, and compliance will become the price of access. Every step will be justified as protection against instability that their own policies created. Your money will still exist, but only on their terms. Then the currency itself will begin to betray you. Groceries will cost more each week, not because of shortages, but because dilution is the quietest form of confiscation. You will notice your paycheck stretching less, your savings shrinking without being touched, and the math of your future changing while you sleep. Inflation will be called progress, growth, momentum, anything but what it is. A slow erasure of purchasing power that requires no consent. The layoffs will follow because leverage always collapses into labor. Corporations will blame market conditions while shedding thousands of workers in identical emails. Skills will no longer matter in a synchronized contraction. Experience will not protect you. Loyalty will not save you. When revenue falters, payroll is the first sacrifice on the altar of shareholder confidence. Housing will be the final emotional wound. For years you were told property was security, the ultimate hedge, the cornerstone of stability. Then rates will rise, buyers will vanish, and prices will slide quietly at first, then violently. Neighbors will sell for less than they paid, and those who borrowed near the top will owe more than their homes are worth. It will not look like a crash, it will look like a slow surrender, street by street. This is how macro failure becomes personal ruin. Not with explosions, but with permissions revoked, access limited, values rewritten, futures postponed. You will feel it in the hesitation before swiping your card, in the dread of opening bills, in the tightening in your chest when the system you trusted stops responding to you. They will offer explanations, committees, reassurances. They will say resilience is required, that sacrifice is patriotic, that stability must be protected at all costs. But the costs will be yours, not theirs. Your savings exist only as permission, and that permission is about to expire. You will not hear about the crash in a headline. You will feel it in your routines unraveling. In the way ordinary decisions become negotiations with institutions that no longer recognize you as anything but a liability to be managed, and the silence will spread. Hope is the most dangerous emotion in a collapsing system because it is so easily hijacked. They will sell you salvation the same way they sold you stability, through products, programs, and promises that look like exits but lead deeper inside the maze. Yet history whispers a different truth. The people who survived 1929 did not foresee the exact day or the exact trigger. They prepared their lives for fragility while everyone else prepared for comfort. Preparation does not look heroic. It looks boring, quiet, almost antisocial. It is a mindset before it is an asset, a refusal to let your entire future depend on digital permission and institutional goodwill. Those who endured past collapses understood something that modern finance wants you to forget. You do not outrun a system by timing it, you outlive it by detaching from it. They never taught this in school because it undermines the story. The story says prosperity is centralized, that safety is outsourced, that responsibility ends where bureaucracy begins. But when the exits close, there is no hotline, no appeal, no override code. There is only whatever resilience you built while the crowd was still celebrating. You can feel the shift already, even if you cannot name it. Conversations are changing. People are hoarding information, not just goods. They are questioning assumptions that once felt sacred. They are realizing that a career is not a fortress, a bank is not a vault, and a pension is not a guarantee. Something is loosening in the collective psyche, a subtle withdrawal of faith. This is where false prophets thrive. They will offer certainty wrapped in buzzwords, miracle hedges, secret opportunities that promise to outsmart a collapsing world. But the survivors of every crash had one thing in common. They did not chase miracles. They reduced dependence. They simplified, diversified, and kept a portion of their lives outside the reach of the systems unraveling around them. Notice the silence from those who once dominated the conversation. The louder the propaganda, the quieter the insiders become. That is not coincidence. It is the sound of positioning. And while you are still deciding whether this is real, they are already acting as if it is inevitable. This video is not your escape. It is your interruption. A pause in the noise where you can ask yourself a forbidden question. If the structures I rely on stopped working tomorrow, what would remain of my security, my identity, my freedom? The answer is not comfortable, but discomfort is the beginning of sovereignty. Because the final phase never announces itself. It does not crash through the door. It locks the exits while everyone is still applauding the performance. And somewhere between this moment and the next, a line will be crossed that cannot be uncrossed. The story is far from over.